Helping adults become better readers. What can adults who struggle with reading do? What careers can they consider? There are ample opportunities to improve the reading abilities of adults who are dyslexic, and a wide range of career possibilities are open to them. To give you an inkling of what is possible, I am going to introduce you to a man who is very dyslexic and is now in the midst of a career neither you nor I would think a dyslexic adult could be successful in, much less one in which he could advance to the very top. Who is this man, and what does this dyslexic adult do professionally? Meet Brian Bannon, a man in his 40s who had difficulty catching on to reading as early as kindergarten, which he repeated. His concerned mom had him tested in first grade, and he was placed in special education, where he remained throughout his schooling. The family did not have great means. His father worked in water well drilling, and his mom in a flower shop. Brian described his mother as being really engaged, his true champion. She strongly encouraged his involvement in theater, and as Brian told me, helped build his self-confidence. And yet, no matter what she did, not being able to learn to read like other kids and as quickly was something I carried with me such a long time. Just the feeling of being stupid, even when you have all the advantages of an engaged parent and a lot of caring teachers. I was probably the only kid in special ed who had a diagnosed learning disability. Most of the kids basically had behavior problems. And what's really sad about that is that I'm the only person in that group of kids who graduated from high school. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and only because I was a swimmer. I got scholarship offers. That was so unexpected for me. I never saw myself as being good at school, so I was going to go directly into a trade. Never in a million years would I have imagined. Even though I had a lot of help, I never read at grade level, but I had a desire to learn. I remember I would sit in on a little neighborhood library, and I would imagine all of the knowledge in those books, but I never really thought it would be possible to be able to absorb all that knowledge and information I really wanted. In 8th grade, there was a teacher who was really trying to help me. He said for all history tests, we could do open note tests. I would study for hours and hours, make notes, bring them into class, and still fail the test. I even tried to game the system. I would transcribe all 3 chapters and literally come into the test with all 3 chapters stacked up and still fail the test. For a person who is dyslexic, achieving success is not all about reading. What else matters? I just couldn't read my notes fast enough to answer the questions in time. And yet, all my work taking notes was a real turning point for me. I learned that I had a level of discipline and a level of work ethic that was far beyond those of my peers. Once I got into college, I started to realize that all those years bumping up against the wall, trying one thing, trying another, really instilled a mindset and habits and discipline that defined my ability to chart out a career and be successful. I graduated at the top of my class in college. From 2012 to May 2019, Brian served as commissioner of the Chicago Public Library. This was Brian's title until May 9, 2019, when the New York Public Library named him as the inaugural Merrill and James Tisch Director of the Library System. The New York Public Library, the largest public library system in the United States, other than the Library of Congress, has 92 locations. Lessons learned: it's not only about how well you read. What else is important? Brian Bannon deservedly reached his pinnacle in the public library world by employing his sea of strengths, recognizing the great strengths surrounding his weaknesses, and put them into play. Here, in Brian's own words, once you are able to get over that hump, what you learn is that on the other side, the higher order thinking is there, the discipline is there, and also the ability to work harder than everybody else who's there. All of a sudden, things open up. I barely imagined graduating from high school, much less college. It was only the factors of a supporting parent, caring teachers, and a university saying, "We'll pay for your college if you come and swim for us," that even got me through the door. Does your dyslexia affect you in your everyday practice as a surgeon?
Yeah, dyslexia has been a constant part of my life ever since I heard the word for the first time at age 34. But I don't read anything other. I didn't read anything other than medical texts for a long time. And I wound up finding out that if I frequently could do the heart operation, but then if I had somebody who had a name other than Smith or Jones that I would have to call after the operation, I'd be in a slight panic about how to even pronounce the name. It's been part of my existence and has affected essentially everything I do. I frankly think it's been a blessing for me after I got through medical school.
So how has that been?
Well, it turns out that I look at problems differently. The first time I realized this when I was at a consultant for a company, and they had very distinguished people around the table, and they were presented a problem. So what do you think? And they went around the table and finally came to me, and I was thinking about it completely differently than everybody else was. That made me realize that I looked at problems differently. The other thing that dyslexia did is that it made me a terrible student. Because I was a terrible student, I just had to work twice as much as anybody else did. And I think that persistence was a beneficial offshoot of being dyslexic and struggling so hard with my educational background.